people not by their own choice have been forced to take a flying leap. And we are going to leap from one subject to the next. Of course, the Super Bowl last night, the Pats won it in a tough situation. I'm kind of bummed out about that, about the Seahawks. But now animal lovers and activists are hoping that New York City Mayor Bill de Blasio doesn't fumble the groundhog again this year.
Last year, de Blasio, as you may remember, dropped the Chuck the groundhog on its head. And the poor little guy died a few days later from his internal injuries. So sad. The death was covered up originally by zoo officials who say Chuck died from natural causes. We have Newsmax TV's John Bachman here to shed a little light on the issue.
Yeah, JD, you appreciate what it can mean to have these ceremonial roles as an elected official here. Groundhog's Day seems to be a harmless political obligation in certain towns like Puxatawney, Pennsylvania, home of Phil, the most famous groundhog, also in Lilburn, Georgia, home of General Beauregard Lee. It happens around the country, believe it or not, like a local mayoral version of pardoning the Thanksgiving turkey at the White House. But in New York, it's been fraught with danger for the mayor and the rodent. Yesterday, Bill de Blasio announced that he would return to Staten Island and the zoo there for this year for the annual Groundhog Day ceremony. Last year, the mayor dropped Chuck, played by a female stand-in. That's another part of the story we'll get to in a moment. But that animal actually died a week later from those internal injuries. But this year, the chosen groundhog has little to fear, I should say, as the mayor will not actually be holding on to it. Instead, the hog will be safely encased in glass. This comes after last year's debacle where the zoo was cited for allowing an untrained person to handle the groundhog, namely de Blasio right there. After the animal died last year, many claim that the Staten Island Zoo tried to cover up the whole thing. Zoo officials say the animal did die from natural causes and that the 6-foot fall, de Blasio is a very tall man, had nothing to do with the groundhog's death.
Right after the ceremony itself, the veterinarian took her into the hospital and did a full examination on her.
Charlotte was x-rayed. There was no indication whatsoever that she received any type of injury from this fall.
Now again, Chuck or Charlotte died last year. The zoo had to admit that it was actually a female stand-in named Charlotte, and that role of weather-predicting rodent was passed on to 4 different groundhogs, actually. The females were all called Charlotte, and all the males are called Chuck. But this isn't the first time the groundhogs and politicians have had a run-in. The real reason why Chuck was switched out for Charlotte in the first place is because the real Chuck took a bite out of then New York City Mayor Michael Bloomberg's hand in 2009, I should say. Zoo officials were worried that Chuck would do the same to de Blasio. So not normally a big deal, but a lot of controversy today in New York City with the Groundhog's Day festivities. JD, Miranda, back to you guys.
I'm almost tempted to call it Groundhog Gate, John, but we do appreciate that. And
that's hard to watch every time.
Knowing
I cringe.
what happened, whether she's Charlotte or he was Chuck. Now they belong to the ages. There is much more ahead here on America's Forum. We'll talk football with Neil Lomax, but right now, a news update.